What's poppin', y'all? I decided to do another little YAP session, and this time it's on how we, and by we I mean you guys, can save hip-hop or restore the feeling, as they call it. Because I'm pretty much gonna lay out exactly how someone, if they wanted to do it, they could do it. Will I do it? Probably not. Well, actually, I'm most definitely not gonna do this. That's why I'm laying it out here, and that's why, the we is OUI, not WE. So you guys are probably gonna have to bear with me a little bit on this. I am gonna ramble. I'm gonna try to stay on point, but when I do these things, I have no notes, no show notes, no nothing. It's just whatever's floating around in my head, which all too often is not enough. With that being said, right now, hip hop sucks. Let's keep it a buck. You've got people saying, there's the best music that's ever being made, this and that. Hip hop, more so than just good music existing, there's gotta be a communal vibe to it, or at least some sort of community. For example, hip hop first started in New York and it was parties. It was DJing, and then, it developed from there. But there's always been like a scene. Right now, there isn't too much of a scene. There's like the mainstream, which is buns. It's everybody just sounds the same, making the same music, talking about a whole lot of nothing, which you don't necessarily have to talk about something. A lot of the time, Future isn't talking about nothing. A lot of the time. I didn't say all the time, before we get these Future stands out here typing away at the keyboard. However, he makes good music, great music at times. This is one of those times where I'm rambling, so I'm not going to deviate from the point. I'm not going to go on a tangent. So circling back, right, there needs to be a communal vibe. In the early internet era, or when the internet was somewhat developed, right, we had blogs, kind of like Tumblrs, Twitters, in MySpace, even like late 2000s, early 2010s. It was basically, a lot of it was blogs. And then it became social media, different platforms, whether it was Instagram, but we still had like these scenes because people would collaborate with each other and their fans would congregate. Then we had SoundCloud era, which I would say this is 2015 onward. No Jumper was the go-to. Like, No Jumper was the hub for anybody that was somewhat underground. And keep in mind, these artists all had fans already, or a degree of fan base, but No Jumper became the hub where you knew this was the communal spot for new, cool music that was by people that were unsigned, and you just wanted to check out what they had to say. Probably found a lot of artists through this, etc. After No Jumper that whole scene died. Let's keep it a buck. It wasn't just like No Jumper changed or whatever. And I don't think they care about it as much, because they did explore the LA scene for a while after that. And I still think they do. I haven't kept up too much. There's a lot of stuff going on there, and I've got a lot of stuff going on my own. So that kind of shattered everything. And a lot of people are saying, man, No Jumper was so great because of X, Y, and Z. There have been scenes since. For example, Bob Lamb was kind of covering, or he was largely covering this new scene, but just a couple of artists in it. But there wasn't a hub for it. These artists were largely on SoundCloud. People were fans of them. It was somewhat fragmented. I guess people would talk about them on Reddit, maybe on Twitter group chats here and there, but there wasn't a central place. And a lot of for example, academic streams, I would say, when he was active too, maybe 2019, 2020, you could consider that somewhat communal, right? There's this one centralized location where people will go and hear about what's going on. People are busy, man. People don't have the time. The average person doesn't have the time to constantly search for different music from different places. So if they have one place where they're okay, I like this person, or I like what this entity represents, and we kind of have similar tastes, I can trust them to do that for me, and I'll discover new people. If I don't like somebody, I don't like them. If I do like them, then I'll pursue it. However, music kind of fell by the wayside. There was a lot of curation on No Jumper. He largely only interviewed artists that he liked. And if he didn't like them, he would let them know. And for a period of time, they were also posting people's music videos on their own channel too. And then eventually it started to become a paid thing, and they kind of stopped doing that. But we haven't had that since. Now, I do think the music is out there. Hyperpop, I would say it's probably a scene which isn't really hip-hop, which is what we're talking about here, that had its own community, albeit very small, and that did its own thing, but it fizzled out. That didn't really end up going mainstream, largely because they don't have the sound to go mainstream. They'd probably have to go pop. So what can be done? Well, I think it would have to go back to the core, which is the music. We've seen certain people get on largely because of music. For example, Yeet, Sofago. Those guys really didn't get on because of gimmicks. Now, Yeet, he knew how to, Yeet created a communal vibe. The way he talked, the way he dressed, the intrigue, these words that he made up, just all of this all together. Largely, his music was the main part, but I think the staying power came from that. The whole Twizzy thing, he had his crew, which I think like some people I think him and September's Rich aren't cool anymore. So that ended up falling out. And also, circling back to my previous point, Lyrical Lemonade was kind of like a hub for a while too, that it was like its own island, separate from No Jumper, but kind of in a similar vein. There was, damn, I can't believe I'm forgetting his name off the top of my head. Cuff Boys. Yeah, like I know who this guy is. So Cuff Boys, he was like doing kind of these vlogs and also these interviews and these reactions. So you had 3 different platforms that were relatively big that were covering a similar scene. So 3 different communities. You've got this communal vibe. And a lot of people say, well, you know, like music is like an auditory experience and it's just like a solo listening experience. And the reason why someone made this comment, so shout out to you for making this comment. I'm not grilling you. I actually appreciate you made this. We as humans, how long have we been here, right? At least a couple thousand years, depending on what you believe, if not tens of thousands. Music has been here, if not, maybe hundreds of thousands. I don't know. I haven't gone that far. Music has been here the entire time, or a large part of time, at least a couple thousand years. When have we started listening to music solo? Either it had to be, was it the phonograph or the graphophone? Whatever that thing was called. I always confuse the name of the invention. But even then, it wasn't something you plugged into your ears and did by yourself. It's something that was playing maybe like in the living room or in a place where there were a lot of people. Then there was a radio and then headphones. So not even 100 years, we'll say, that listening to music was this thing you did by yourself and an auditory thing. Before that, you couldn't even play music. You had to go somewhere to where people were playing music, and there were likely other people there. So it was always a communal thing. It was a visual experience too, because someone had to be playing the instruments. They didn't just like press play on the tape, because there weren't tapes, there weren't CDs, there weren't records, none of that before 150 years ago, which is very, very recent. So I still think the enjoyment of the music, also circling back, forums were a big thing too. Those were kind of communal, and those kind of have died out in large part for like the new generation. So music always been a communal thing, whether you were going to a show, opera, whatever it was. It was played with a bunch of other people interacting, talking about it, and that's always what's happened within hip-hop too. Like, communities always form, and I think that's integral to the music listening experience and to enjoy a scene as a whole. Otherwise, it's not really a scene. And that's why I reject the whole notion of, yeah, this is like a solo activity and people should just look up music on their own and find it out. Sure, there are some people like that, but I don't think those people should impose it on the vast majority who I think enjoy the community aspect of it, even if it's just like talking about things. Like, for example, like leaking was another community thing that happened. Like, there were a couple of artists that they really cared about their leaks, and sure, obviously they wanted the music, but I think a lot of people met other people of similar interests through those leaks or leaking communities, and they would just became friends probably. I mean, you probably met a person or two if you're watching this. I was never in these leaking communities, but this is just what happens and what's birthed out of any community that comes out of any shared interest, really. So back to now. Now it's largely fragmented. Algorithms have changed. Music has changed in the way that it's marketed. A lot of it is like one hits, people just popping out of nowhere. And that's changed things a lot because communities usually build, because these guys had fan bases before they ever had a hit. A lot of these people had significant fan bases, were able to tour, make a full-time living, and never had a hit, and still don't have a hit, that were underground artists, even till today. Like, they may have songs that have streamed tens of millions of times by now in a span of 10 years, but those songs aren't hits in the sense that they broke out. So TikTok kind of shifted that. So a lot of people started to just blow up, get signed, maybe have one big song, and then they just fizzled out of here. There's more than we can even count off the top of our heads that have done this. So this makes it harder for people to get invested in artists, because artists that are being pushed to the forefront just have one song. They don't really represent anything. They haven't been there for long enough for you to build this love for them or appreciation or kind of root for them. The first time you're seeing them, they're basically winning already. So it's kind of like, oh, okay. And there's always that community of like early adopters that want to be there when someone's still grinding, and they want to be there with them for years, or at least like a year or two, to finally see them win and see them develop and see their sound get better and better. So how can this be changed now? What I think needs to do is it needs to go back to the music. So there has to be content that is music centric. Like, for example, Patrick CC did a really good job of this and doing an ongoing good job of this with like those Twitch streams that he does. Like, he built a community of music listeners, and that has its pros and its cons, like when he was doing Twitch and stuff like that. But I think that has to happen for artists that have a tiny buzz, whose music is really good. So the individual has to be, I don't think they necessarily have to have clout, although that would accelerate things, make it a lot faster. So let's say someone has a following within music, right? Or something close to music. That person fosters some sort of like recurring cast of characters or artists whose music that they like. So they're curating it. They're like, hey, everybody that's going to appear on this platform, I mess with their music. So they're co-signed and their music has been, how do you say, vetted, I guess. And then they do content together. How does that look like? I don't know. I think because this way, the artist doesn't look quote unquote corny because the artist isn't making the content, but they're also looking like they're more important than they really are because someone that has this following of people that are interested in music is working with them or like making content with them. And it can be either like freestyles, it can be like studio sessions, it can be someone working on music in person, it can be a whole host of different things. It could just be listening to the person's music, seeing what this person's been on, etc. It just has to be a singular person or group that's really interested in something like that. Would it be streaming? That's a different question too, because streaming has, I would say it has the strongest communities right now, the most active people, and they're young too, so they really care about music and their opinions can be swayed by the streamer. Now, the problem is the incentive structure. So you're basically saying, hey, if someone's kind of lit, what do they benefit from not shilling, but pushing to the forefront a smaller musician, even if they like their music, that is barely making ends meet or not making any money at all? Where's the incentive? The upside is that, I don't know, maybe he gets some content out of it, which isn't going to perform as good as the regular content. For the other guy, the artist, he can blow up and then he has like infinite benefit. He has no loss because either way, he's getting pushed in front of an audience. His music is getting out there and he's getting co-signed by someone who already has a following. So this is where we kind of get to this impasse because the incentive structure has to be figured out by this person, that this mythical person that is going to pretty much, take Moses' staff and split the sea and guide us into the promised land. I'm waiting for whoever's going to do this. I will be right behind you in support. I'll be watching, I'll show some support, but I won't be doing this. That's way too much of a headache. So there's the incentive structure. I think that's one thing that's holding it back. Why do I think this will work? Because now people that are fans or supporters or viewers of this streamer, personality, YouTuber, it could be just a video content creator, know that they have something to look forward to, and a scene will slowly develop. Like producers that work with these rappers, they'll start to get, I guess, like clout, ancillary. And then the collaborators that these artists work with, they'll start to like pick up a little bit because it's just a web. Like if people are really interested in a certain artist, they're going to follow them. And then they're going to see who that person works with. And if they like them, they're going to listen to who that person works with. And if they like them, then they're going to follow them. So now there's like the building blocks are there for a scene to start cultivating. And I don't think the scene has to sound the same or be of the same genre, but this is something that we have always looked towards in hip hop. Like for example, when there was like a quote unquote Jacksonville scene, like Florida drill or whatever it was called, which lasted for like 3 months. Everyone started following that and they started flocking to it. There was the element of violence, which makes it that much more enticing. But the same thing happened with Brooklyn drill. The same thing happened with Bronx drill, which is kind of still doing its thing. New York drill, I guess you could just bunch them all up right now. And a lot of these artists blew up just from one artist blowing up, and then either, in this case, in Drill's case, them having problems with the other artist, and then the storyline starts to develop. And I think there can be a storyline that's just based on music, like how they met. Someone's going to have to interview these people, because you've got to get the person in front of this audience, the artist in front of these people, and get them interested enough that they want to know more about this person. Because you can't just interview somebody that nobody's ever heard of and doesn't care about, because what the hell is the point of the interview then? They're not going to invest their time. Like, people's time is worth a lot. You're asking for minutes, if not tens of minutes, if not dozens of minutes, if not an hour of a person's time for someone that they don't know. It's not a tough choice for them to make, to just not click on that or not check that out. Now, if the people have been accustomed to this character, they've seen him a bunch of times, and the thing is, it has to be organic, really, which audiences have gotten really good at seeing. What I wouldn't say really good. They've gotten better at noticing what's being pushed towards them. But in this case, they're going to know the person's not signed. And the person not being signed is a big deal too, because they're handing out deals to everyone, like at least a distribution deal right now. Like they're slinging those things around like crazy. I mean, not major distribution from the bigger labels, but there's a lot of these indie distribution companies that are reaching out to people. And, you know, it's like a favorable thing, but there's like money in their pocket, and it takes away that, oh, I'm getting it out the mud image that a lot of us love when it comes to rooting for upcoming artists. So moving forward, let's say all of these pieces get put together. For example, like an Internet Money is a really good example of pretty much almost having had this on lock, although from the producer section. Now, theirs was kind of educational at the same time. I don't think this should be educational in any respect, unless it's educational from a marketing standpoint in terms of like, hey, this is how we're going to get this person lit. And everyone's just watching it happen in real time, because that's somewhat instructional, but it's really like content. And they had artists, so they kind of like had this house that they were all living in. There probably has to be a shared space, although I don't think that's necessary. Like No Jumper, people used to just pull up to the No Jumper store, right? Like if there's a storefront and these guys just come in, kick it there, there's like a vlog going on, there's cool stuff going on. I don't know, people are skateboarding, people are always smoking. Like people are playing games, maybe they're playing like some basketball, which do rappers even play sports nowadays or have the ability to play a sport for more than 5 minutes? Something like that. And then just consistency, because it takes time for people to get invested into people, especially artists now. And I think this is what people are looking for, because they don't want like, okay, I'm seeing this person on TikTok. It kind of gives them this yuck feeling where they're like, is this being pushed to me or not? But if they see someone again and again and they enjoy their music, they start to adopt a feeling of, man, why is this person not more poppin'? And it's not an actual frustration, but it's something that kind of irks them. And they're like, man, I'm rooting for this guy. This is the underdog, because we all want the underdog to win. That has the most relatability, because a lot of people, the majority of people, even if they're talented, in one way or another, they feel like the underdog in some skill or aspect of life, which is what makes it so relatable. And then over time, I think this can become a thing. Now, a game show with music of like unsigned artists that are really good, that's something that would have to be figured out, but I think that has the highest likelihood of really cracking it, because you want to keep people's attention, and game shows can do that very, very well if curated properly, especially competitive game shows, because everybody wants to see who wins. Yeah, this is something I've thought about for a very long time, and I could have laid it out better, but I'm pretty sure you guys get the idea. I always try to make these things like I'm having a conversation with you guys, and this is pretty much how I get a lot of ideas, is I just like chop it up with someone like this. The problem is this will likely cost money for the person that's doing it. So they're going to lose money, and they don't even know if they'll make money on it. So it has to be someone that has time, patience, is willing to spend money on something that may not even make the money back, and is really, really, really doing it out of the love. And to find all those things together, it's not easy. Because the thing with No Jumper is I think Adam realized like, yo, I've kind of made a bunch of careers and I haven't gotten paid off of this at all, in respect to how those artists blew up. And that's the thing too. A lot of artists, once they blow up, they kind of, I wouldn't say forget, they know where they came from. They're like, I'm too big for that. That's not a good look for me anymore. I've got to go to the next level, which is understandable logically, but it gives you a justifiably salty feeling if you're the person that assisted this person and made a major assist in this person's career, even getting there in the first place. And I think this is why you guys don't see this happen anymore. Twitter communities could be a thing, which people talk about this stuff, but Twitter communities for a music scene, like a person is always a person or a platform, and the discussions around it is always going to garner a lot more engagement and investment from people than like a scene of music. Like the scene comes after that, because for example, just like look at No Jumper, right? No Jumper became the company started making content about itself. And it's like, oh, this personality talked about this personality. So it wasn't even about like what they were talking about outside of the company anymore. It kind of became like its own universe. And that's what happens when you have individuals and a platform. Now, music scene is a little bit different. And even back then, like when there was just like Robesman and Adam, like people would always make these memes about Robesman, and like this community started building from people, not like 16 different artists that we're all listening to. And like, what, this is like new SoundCloud, or like, what does a scene even mean, represent, and relate to a group of people? Those are 3 things you have to answer if you want like a lot of investment. And then there has to be like a central leader that dictates that. So that central leader is either going to be an artist who isn't going to do this, or it's going to be an individual that's also probably like making content about it. So you see how that ties in one to one? I think that would, quote, restore the feeling. Circling back to the beginning of this. And it's something that I really hope to see. I think a lot of people will flock to. If the music's good, it's gonna work. Like we really just need to be exposed to good music from the right places. Because TikTok, it's really not communal whatsoever. It's like completely tailored to a specific person and people are just scrolling through it. Instagram, not really. Like I said, forums are dead. Discords could be another like aspect of it, but think about it. The Discord would just be the support and like the after hours. Same thing with Twitter communities. The after hours for the platform / individual that's curating this scene. And I can't wait to see it because, man, hip hop is so boring. I wake up and I'm like, what do I even talk about? I don't know what to talk about. Half the time, I don't even make a video because there's just nothing interesting. It's like everything is kind of an attention grab that isn't even an attention grab that we care about past 15 minutes. Like I'll set up the mic and be like, I don't even care about this. What am I doing? And then I just won't record. So somebody please take the helm and bring us into the promised land. I'll be waiting. I'm really interested to hear what you guys think. What solutions do you think? Like let's brainstorm this. Let's do a think tank right here. Like what is it that those conspiracy theories, they say like some politicians pay these think tanks. Let's be that think tank, except we're going to be unpaid. How do you think we can figure out how to solve the problem right now? Because I don't think better music is the problem. I think there is good music out there. It's just that we don't know where it's at and we need someone to bring it together. You know how everybody talks about decentralized, this and that. Yeah, sure, that's all well and good for, maybe privacy or all these other aspects. But when it comes to music, we need it centralized, man. A lot of us need it centralized. Otherwise, there's just like these different fragments of people listening to whatever they're listening to and they don't even intersect. So yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comments. How would you fix this? How would you add or remove any of the things that I've said? Feel free to leave any actual disagreements, but just don't say something like dumb and not beneficial to anybody else. In the comments, I pretty much read all of them on these episodes for sure. For the most part, I would say I read like 85 to 90. If I say I'm going to read all the comments, I do, especially in the first day or two. So yeah, like and subscribe and hit the notification bell if you enjoyed. If you guys like these, I'll keep doing them. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram. Thank you for watching. Peace.